Councilmember Howellman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littleworth.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the items as stated have been approved. And now we will go to item number 4, which is specific to the safety improvements at North Avenue and Trailway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, there is a detailed staff report that's included in the packet. For several months, the city has been working with residents in the area of Trailway and North Avenue pertaining to public safety concerns at that intersection. As a staff, we have undertaken a number of different initiatives to address traffic calming, using enforcement and education. And the third component of traffic management is taking a look at engineering solutions. And so after several months, we did engage with a traffic engineer to take a look at several options for consideration. And the recommendation that's included in the packet is that engineering solution that's before you for consideration. We held a neighborhood meeting and open house on August 3rd to present the proposed plans with the neighborhood and solicit their feedback. There were 3 residents in attendance at that meeting. And in advance and subsequent to that meeting, we also had conversations with residents in the area to discuss the proposed improvements. Know there are a number of residents here this evening that would like to also address the city council. And if you're interested in further details about the engineering or enforcement efforts, we have Engineer Gomez that is with us this evening, and Police Chief Jogman that can answer questions as well.
Okay, so do we first want to hear from members of the council or members from the public? I'd be curious to hear
Members of the public.
Members of the public, exactly, the people who are affected in their own local neighborhood.
So Mr. Needleman, I know you indicated you wanted to talk, so I will unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Can you, I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, good evening to everyone. My name is Todd Needleman. I reside at 1258 North Avenue, which is 4 houses down from this intersection at North and Trailway. In the 20 plus years of living on North Avenue, we've been direct witnesses to the amazing, absolutely amazing success of the Highland Park District in developing the Danny Cuniff facility into what it is today. So accolades to the hard work of that organization. It's truly amazing. But I can also say without equivocation that every single season of every single sports cycle draws an ever-increasing volume of traffic flying down Trailway and into the park. And the speed in which many of these cars are traveling through our community is very fast and dangerous. And by dangerous, I mean 10 and 20, even 30 miles per hour over the posted limits. Spring and fall soccer tryouts, summer baseball leagues, figure and hockey skating, pickleball, you name it. This facility has become a magnet for drivers late to a game or a lesson or a tournament, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole neighborhood uses this crosswalk effectively for whatever purpose, walking dogs, access to school, leisure. It just connects us to the other parts of the neighborhoods around us. And truly, I invite any of the council members to join me on any given morning, late afternoon, or even evening and stand with me out of that intersection and just observe with me what's going on. It's relentless and it's continuous and it's difficult to control. There's no doubt about it. Here's the great news. The great news is our neighborhood is now bursting with brand new families who have come into the neighborhood. So there's new generations coming in, which is wonderful. They have many young kids, not even yet school age, but will become school age. And you know what? These families up and down Trailway, assuming they're going to the schools in our neighborhood, will be using this, will be funneling through this single crosswalk. And I'll say, as a father of kids with special needs, I'm constantly worried that my son might slip out the garage door on his scooter and head to that intersection. And, you know, cars blow through the crosswalk sign we have there all the time. And so it's, it's something that always been of concern to me. And I'm always kind of couched my frantic behavior when I don't hear him in my house. But the point is that, many of these drivers that are coming to Danny Cuniff Park are coming from outside of Highland Park. So it's not that they may not even realize that they're driving through a densely populated community, or they may not realize, or they may not care to realize it. But the fact of the matter is that they are coming through fast. So I feel it's time to approve these funds so that the project can move forward and we can breathe a little easier, that our community safety, and by that I mean our immediate community safety where we live, and our well-being is considered as important as it is soccer games and pickleball tournaments. Nothing against those. I'm just all for safety and longevity. So I guarantee you that the traffic on Trailway is not going to decrease anytime soon. It's not going to decrease in the next 2 decades, and the pace of that traffic is not going to decrease either. So traffic calming on this stretch of dangerous road, to me, is absolutely the right thing to do. And I would just urge each of the council people to please consider that. And thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Needleman? And I know most, if not all of us, have spent time at that crossing just to better understand not only the stormwater issues, but also the traffic calming needs in the neighborhood. So appreciate your invitation. Thank you for sharing your observations and your ongoing concerns. We share those ongoing concerns. And so hence here we are having this conversation, and appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. Gita, others have their hands up, I believe, and I just want to reiterate that we do ask that people stick to the 3-minute time limit for comments. Thank you.
So Jane Mordini, you are unmuted.
Wow, that was very hard to join you all, but I'm here. It's nice to see you all. It's been a while. Can you see me or just hear me?
We can just hear you.
Hear you. We cannot see.
That is such a relief because it's really a bad hair day. Okay, so I'm jumping in knowing little about what you guys have done over the past. I mean, I've known about this issue for years and years and years. And what happens is people with young kids like Mr. Needleman move in, become aware of what is a real situation and a real danger, and then they fight and fight and fight, or they work and work and work, or however you want to describe their efforts, until their kids wind up, going to high school or college, and issues change and it gets dropped and they move on to, the next round, and nothing ever happens with this intersection other than the city did place a crosswalk and a sign to, stop if pedestrians are in the crosswalk. In my opinion, and then I heard that the solution was going to be to spend several hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo the actual street, the concrete, and to make the street narrower. And that's why I'm chiming in. If in fact that is the recommendation that the council is considering or that has been made, I did want to make some points, and they are as follows. It is a dangerous area, and it is a necessary crosswalk, not just because kids from the area are playing, but kids gain access to Northwood Junior High and Wayne Thomas Elementary School by accessing the bridge right at that intersection over the North Fork through Sleepy Hollow Park into the part of the neighborhood where I live and where the schools are. And when I served on the school board, we actually had to absorb the great expense of busing kids because it presented such a danger to cross the street there and without any assistance. So especially for younger, kids in elementary school. The other thing is, as Mr. Needleman pointed out, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, it's an area where there are young families. And what that means also is that 15 and 16-year-olds are driving down this street, and they don't have the awareness that we would all like them to, because that only comes with experience, as we know. So they're heavy-footed and they're cruising down, and they're the kids that take advantage of the facilities at the end of the road. with the ice skating rink in the parks, and they present a particular and unique danger. My question for you all is, I don't understand, over the 20 or so years that I've been aware of this issue at that exact intersection, why do we not just put up stop signs? I don't know why we're looking for solutions when the solution is stop signs. Make people stop. I don't know why we wouldn't. It's in the name of safety. It's in the name of getting kids to schools. And it's in the name of, giving parents and children peace of mind. And I also am curious, like in narrowing the streets, are you planning to take out the parking spots that exist there so that the community can enjoy the green space of Sleepy Hollow and park and cross the bridge and bring their dogs? Dogs, are in that park constantly. And some people can't walk there. Some people access that park from that area driving. For any number of reasons, they can't walk to the park from there. So I'm just curious about why not a stop sign, and why not leave the parking spots if in any way you were considering to eliminate them to narrow the roadway. And I don't see that a narrow roadway reduces the speed of cars, especially driven by younger folks. And to me, it creates more danger because it's less room for somebody to swerve to avoid a kid. It's less room for a kid to dart out of the way. I mean, to narrow the street seems to me to create more danger, not eliminate the danger. And I don't know why a narrow street particularly limits the speed that people will go, especially, again, younger drivers. And I don't understand the cost of redoing the concrete in the street itself when a stop sign, actually 2 to 3 stop signs at that T intersection, would solve the problem, like in the blink of an eye. And the money could be spent on stormwater management, which is a huge issue and for sure going to be bigger and bigger as the years go by. We're going to experience what New Jersey and New York just went through in a matter of years, especially right there on the fork of the Chicago River. So
Yeah, I can address that. I'm happy to address that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give our staff a heads up. I'm going to promote City Engineer Manny Gomez and Police Chief Lou Jogman to also jump in. So Ms. Mordini, excellent questions. So as it pertains to stop signs, the city adheres to federal regulations for stop sign warrants that are set forth in what's called the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So there are basically warrant standards that should be met in order for a stop sign to be implemented.
And I'm so sorry to interrupt. I hate it when people did it to me, but I just want to say that those standards are sort of recommendations, and they're recommendations and or policies that I think need to be evaluated individually, and they need to change, and they need to grow, and they need to meet the ever evolving, status of our community and the state of the world. So it's nice that you follow the standards. They're there for a reason, but they're not black letter law. And
correct. So
I don't understand the adherence.
I'm going to chime in. Jane, hang on. All right. So you know me, I love to run a tight ship. So here's where we are. 3 minutes for a comment.
Sorry.
Your comment. No, I love you. And you know that, we're all good. So Jane, to those who are new, Jane and I go back to high school. So in any case, appreciate the comments, appreciate the insights, especially from folks who are living right there. But to that end, I'm going to ask, just for the sake of people having a civil conversation, please make your statement. This isn't just for you, Jane. This is for anybody who wants to join us this evening and make a statement. But if you could make your statement and then let our city manager respond. You don't know where we are and you don't know what our positions are. So I think it's important for us to just sort of get the viewpoints onto the table, and then we'll have that conversation. And thank you. Okay.
I appreciate it, and I apologize.
No apology needed. Go ahead, Gita.
Yeah, thank you. Again, so just for public information, there are federal guidelines that we adhere to as it pertains to stop sign warrants. Now, those warrant standards are reviewed. We have a traffic management committee that consists of our city engineers and our law enforcement professionals, as well as other professionals that review each consideration for whether it be a stop sign or other traffic calming device, and those are evaluated. So we take a look at crash history. We put the speed trailer up. We're measuring speed volumes, the number of vehicles. We're taking into consideration educational facilities, parks, various factors into determining. Generally, stop signs are not effective to stop traffic. To slow down traffic. And so there are other means, such as choking the roadway, which is an engineering solution to forcibly slow down traffic. The other important element is unwarranted stop signs. Generally, for a driver, they generally know where an unwarranted stop sign is because it's not natural to stop there at a cross intersection. And so, as the chief would say, and I've promoted the chief as well as our city engineer, stop signs are only good as they are adhered to. And so individuals not stopping at those stop signs, people have a false sense of security crossing at that intersection if there's a stop sign there and thinking that people are automatically going to stop, and they don't. Of course, we do enforcement, but naturally we can't be at every stopped intersection everywhere, and throughout the community. And then the other thing that we did, so the residents certainly know the crosswalks are marked. We have signs up. Again, we've put the speed trailer up. We've done enforcement. We've done education. And so a number of different means have been implemented before we got, obviously, to this engineering solution that's on the agenda this evening. So I have promoted the chief and city engineer Gomez. Is there further information that either of you wish to add?
Ida, do you want an order, me or the chief first? This is Manny.
Oh, Manny, go ahead, and I'm just gonna just turn your camera on. Manny, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
All right, great. Thank you, Gate. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and of course all the residents that are joining us tonight for this meeting. I'd like to respond to some of the comments that were just made concerning the safety and the proposed improvements. The MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control, they are guidelines. That's correct. I mean, there's nothing in there. It's not a federal mandate that says the city of Highland Park must follow this to the letter or else you lose all federal funding and be arrested or anything drastic like that. They're guidelines, but these guidelines have been around for a long time and were developed by a lot of smart people that do this all the time. Traffic engineers, highway engineers. I mean, they've been looking at this stuff for a long time. The reason that they're there, and the reason it doesn't say put up stop signs everywhere you want to put them up. Who cares? They're great. They're a solution to everything. Is because they're not a solution to everything. Stop signs are great when they're appropriate. When they're not appropriate, they can create other problems. One is, like Gita said, if people don't feel comfortable stopping or don't think they need to stop, they may roll through a stop sign or not stop completely. How many of you have driven through shopping malls where you see stop signs, like especially when you're there at night in a parking lot and there's nobody around? Do you really stop at every stop sign and then go through? I think a lot of people have like rolled through them. So that's one thing. The other thing is they can provide a false sense of security. I mean, for example, if you're crossing that crosswalk and you're a kid and you see a stop sign, you think, well, everybody's going to obey the stop sign. But some drivers, unfortunately, don't. We all know that. And if you walk out on that cross in the street thinking cars are going to stop just because there's a stop sign and they don't, we all know what the consequences of that could lead to. And none of us want to see that. And of course, stop signs in the wrong place, and too many of them will make drivers angry. Why am I stopping? What is the stop sign here for? I don't see the purpose for it. And then they'll want to speed up to the next stop sign. And they'll keep going and going until they get to wherever they're going, and then they're upset because they had to stop at 100 stop signs on their way there. So, stop signs have their place, and this is not one of those places, at least in my opinion, it's not. Otherwise, we would have recommended it and said, hey, let's do this. This is a good solution. It's not. Okay, the other thing I wanted to respond to was narrowing of the road. It's amazing how many people have various opinions on this, and I appreciate that. There's a mountain of information from the FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, on traffic calming. And narrowing of the roads is a measure that's been constructed, studied, analyzed, and has been proven to reduce speed. what happens is there's something called roadway geometrics. Have any of you driven on 294? It's great. It's wide. The lanes are wide. It's straight. You can easily hit 100 if you want to, or as fast as your car can go, and probably feel comfortable. What that means is drivers will drive at a speed that they're comfortable driving with their ability, their vehicle, and the facility. In this case, Trailway is pretty wide. It's 13 feet each lane. That's pretty wide for this road. So people are comfortable going fast, especially the younger kids that like to speed. So narrowing the lanes, we do think, will make a difference, and will force, it chokes them down, so it forces people to slow down. So those are the things that I would you know, in response to the latest comments that we heard. And we think that, you know, the proposed improvements will address safety. We're narrowing the road to address the speeding issue, which we've heard over the years over and over again. We set up the speed trailer. We know people are speeding on this road. It's wide, it's comfortable to speed, and people are going to drive how they feel comfortable. The other thing we're doing is we're you know, enhancing the crosswalks. We're restriping it. We're putting in these raised markers so that people can see the pavement at night. Again, increasing visibility. And finally, we're proposing to put in these rapid flashing beacons. There are these solar powered lights, so they're green. You know, they don't require power from ComEd, for example. They will be activated when, you know, people press a button. It's not a giant light like the one you see at the high school, the Hawk. These are a much smaller scale. But again, they provide that additional alert to motorists. Hey, something's going on here. They flash and they let people know, you know, that something's going on. They'll catch your attention. So we think that these improvements will enhance the safety at an area where we know people are crossing, especially young people, kids really in this case, going to school, going to the park, from that neighborhood on the west side, going to the east side. And again, I think, you know, based on what I've seen and the information that I have and the problems that we're trying to address, we think this is a good solution. And that's what I'd like to end with. Thank you.
Manny, could you address, we did receive a question, if this will affect flooding?
No, this is not a flood mitigation project, but we are working in the floodway and floodplain. We're not making it worse. We make sure of that, and we did apply for a permit, not only through the state, which delegated to Lake County, but we're working with Lake County on getting a permit. What the permit will do, it'll ensure that Highland Park is not doing anything here to make flooding worse as part of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tapia, do you mind if we hear from the chief first? Or did you have something you wanted to add to what Manny was saying?
Well, if I could ask it and then either one could answer it, but there was a pending comment about, you know, if the road is narrowed, you know, cars can't swerve to avoid a person, or a person can't run from a car that's headed their way. Can that be addressed by Engineer Gomez or?
Yeah, I can respond to that, yes. Well, first of all, you know, narrowing the pavement means that there's less distance to travel for a pedestrian crossing trailway, which is good. If a car is going to swerve, it doesn't, you know, it's not going to make much difference. What really makes a difference is that the pedestrian is not in a crosswalk when a car is there or swerving on the pavement. So, you know, I don't think that, you know, that's going to be too much of a concern, especially when we narrow the pavement. We're trying to get people to cross across, you know, trailway as fast and as safely as we can. And that's one reason, that's another reason it's being, the width is being reduced.
Thank you.
Chief, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I certainly want to kind of echo everything that our city engineer said. From an engineering perspective, I certainly defer to them. But I also am sympathetic to the residents, sympathetic to all the residents throughout our community and actually across the country with respect to the safety of driving right now. I read an article just the other day, Car and Driver. NHTSA has done a study and found that driving after COVID is the worst it's been in 10 years, and fatalities are up 10%. So we've got our hands full nationally and certainly locally, but we do want our residents to know that we're out there. And from an enforcement perspective, while stop signs do sound like they make, you know, they're intuitive and they seem to make sense, there is an awful lot of both anecdotal information, but also some studies that have been conducted that kind of prove the opposite. Traffic signals and stop signs are good for traffic control, but they're not so good for traffic calming. So in other words, they help make traffic flow in a more orderly fashion, but they just don't necessarily make it safer. So enforcement is an important part of the overall traffic safety approach, and our officers are spending time where they can. You know, what we tend to try to do is we have to prioritize with resources, and so we do our data collection, and we find those areas in town that are hot spots, and they're throughout town, and they shift and they change from time to time, but we spend our time there and then we move along. So we'll continue to do that, certainly in this area, because it's demonstrated that there is a need for speed enforcement. My concern is, and what I've seen, you know, over my almost 30 years, is when we do add these stop signs, like Manny said, and it's been discussed, unfortunately, it just presents more opportunities for more violations, and generally they sometimes are counterproductive.
Thank you. Gita, I know I see other people's hands are up, so I'll let you continue to proceed through the neighbors.
Henry Greenberg.
Look at that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I was looking on the agenda meeting notes, and I was having trouble finding the exact cost of what the project would be. Could that be elaborated on?
Yes.
Or like an about cost?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do have a cost estimate. So the infrastructure safety improvements total $232,000, 460. And then the plan is to use the street storm and bike walk funds.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you answering my question. And then since the goal of narrowing the street is to decrease speed and not so much enforce stopping, has speed humps been looked at as a plausible alternative to narrowing the street? I know they work in the city. My car hates them. I think everyone's cars hate them, but they definitely do work. And I think they could also be enjoyed further down Trailway as it gets closer to Centennial Ice Arena, because people speed along that curve all the time. I know we're not talking about that, but speed humps, a study by the American Journal of Public Health in 2004 released that speed humps themselves decrease death by nearly 40% over a 5-year period. So I can share it in the chat. It's also very easy to look up. But that's just my 2 cents on the matter. I appreciate you all doing this work to basically slow down drivers. And yeah, they are from out of town and they don't understand that, yeah, there is a crosswalk there with lots of children. But that doesn't, like, narrowing the street may do a lot, but that's going to cost a significant amount of money. And that's going to be a year-long project at least. Whereas a speed hump can be, I don't know how long that costs, but it feels like it would take less time than a narrowing of the street.
Yeah.
And I yield to the floor.
Mayor, I can definitely address that, and then our staff can jump in. So first, in terms of the timing, I mean, we do recognize, over $200,000. It is certainly a lot of money for this engineering solution. In terms of the timing, the cost proposal and the estimate we received anticipates that the work would be complete by the end of October. So it's not a long project. And then in terms of speed bumps, and there's also something called speed humps, which are similar but yet different. Those are 2 also additional traffic calming measures that are utilized in a number of cities around the nation. We don't recommend them for several different reasons. And particularly along Trailway at North Avenue, if a speed hump or speed bump was put right at that location, it is highly likely that that family right on North Avenue would be hearing every car bottom out, every landscape trailer, every truck. Those generate a significant amount of noise as cars are going over them, even at a low speed. We have received, there are complaints where people are doing damage to their cars, especially that have low cars like a Corvette or, something of that nature. The speed humps, and I was there earlier this afternoon, I think I counted 4 of them that are all along the Park District property. So those are on Park District property. We don't have any speed humps on city public streets, and we don't recommend them. Also, if you think about it for emergency response personnel, if there is an ambulance that needs to travel to the Park District building, they don't want to be slowed down by these speed bumps, especially if they have a patient in the back. Or they're en route to an emergency. So they do present a number of different challenges and are not recommended for those reasons.
I know we have other members of the neighborhood who wish to speak.
So Robert Wittenberg.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm playing on my phone right now, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I live just 2 driveways west there on North Avenue. And I was at the council meeting back when we were all did things live and in person, when the topic of putting the now sign of sort of stop when there are pedestrians in the walkway came about. So at that time I was very adamantly in favor of getting a stop sign, and I heard all of the same reasons that you were sharing now, why stop signs are such a bad thing. And I know it's clear that everyone on this council, or at least the ones speaking, are very much against stop signs. One of my points.
That's not the case, and so we'll have that.
Okay, the ones who have spoken. All right, then I'm glad I'm wrong. One thing about what we have now, and I did make this point to the council back then, was that it's very much sort of it's not definitive as to whether someone was in the crosswalk or not versus a stop sign, which is very much black or white. So I'm going to make that point, and I know I'm probably not going to change any minds with that. My other comment is actually from my wife, in that what kind of lights, or how much light, I don't know if it's the right word, light pollution is going to be set off by sort of these alerts that come by during the dark hours that someone is driving and needs to slow down. Is this something that's going off every time, or is it constant, or is it just when some car approaches? I'm curious about that.
That's a good question. So it's manual. So if someone is at that crosswalk and needs to cross, they would push a button, and then that's when the light would activate, and it would send a signal to the vehicles in either direction that there's a pedestrian at that crossing that wishes to cross. So it is unlikely there would be a lot of people crossing there in the evening that would trigger it. And we don't anticipate that the light emitted would be a concern for any of the neighboring properties, like any of those homes would be able to see it or anything of that nature. And Manny, is there anything else, or can you just confirm that?
Gita, no, I think you said it well. They are actuated manually, so you have to press a button for the light to turn on. They're solar powered, so they're not running on 120 volt or 240 volt current. And the lights are relatively small. They're like rectangular in shape, and they're LEDs because they're efficient with using solar power, and they do flash. And again, they're only going to be activated when a person pushes the button. So they won't be coming on every time a vehicle goes by. They won't be on constantly. They're much smaller than the Hawk, which is installed over at the high school on St. John's. It's a much smaller device. So I don't think it'll be, a bunch of light pollution all over the neighborhood, or it's like the firework display. It won't be anything like that. Gita, one more thing I forgot to mention. Somebody mentioned about the parking in that area right next to this. We are not affecting one spot at all. All the parking spots remain as they are now.
Great, thank you. I think that was Jane Mordini who asked that question. Okay, I don't see any other hands from the public at this point. Councilmember Littler.
Okay, so I have several comments I'd like to make, if that's okay. Unfortunately, I apologize. They're not in any particular order, so I'd like to go through several of them. First of all, as to the narrowing of what's being proposed, one of the neighbors that I spoke to, who's an architect, who thought this was a horrible idea, said, anybody who's in a rush to get their child to a soccer game or some event will almost play chicken, in the sense that I got to get in there first. So they'll actually speed up to get into a narrower spot instead of slowing down. So that was something that disturbed me tremendously. Then I spoke to two moms who walk their kids to school, or their kids walk on their own, who also felt they wanted more space if, God forbid, they needed to get out of the way of anything. So I really had a problem with the narrowing. I also feel like there's this tremendous gap. On the one hand, I thoroughly commend the work that's been done by staff, because I think we really, really researched this and said, what is the best possible way to really, really try and put the kibosh on this speeding, after having tried multiple different things. But I think that what we are doing, or what we are proposing, because even though this problem has been going on for a long time and we've tried to educate, for example, if you go up there, the sign that says, that warns that if someone's in the crosswalk, one should stop. Frankly, it's covered by a bush. Half of it's there. So the first time I drove by it, I didn't see half of it. So that's number one. We could have larger signage. And I guess all that's leading me to say is, I think that we're going straight from zero or stop sign or one bump to $250,000. And I just think sledgehammer in any way problem. I'm very concerned. And again, I really up at North. It's beautifully, if it was one speed bump all the way across, or hump, I'm sorry, I don't know the correct terminology. If it was a stop sign, it's not like there's this long way in which you're going to drive so that the stop sign's in the middle of nowhere. You've just come off of a stop sign. And so frankly, at least going in the one direction toward Kniff, which frankly, to my eye, when I sat there for a while yesterday, seemed to be the way in which people were speeding, at least we could try and stop traffic. And that brings me to a really important point, which is try. There's nothing to say that this will be the solution that ends all solutions. But without trying it, we're really taking a very expensive solution without seeing if perhaps a stop sign would work. I don't think that this council or the city puts up stop signs willy-nilly. I think we are incredibly responsible about respecting what the guidelines say. Again, they are guidelines, which leads me to the point that sometimes in a special situation, you might need a stop sign where it might not be warranted in another place. But in our particular situation, perhaps this is the one that we want to use. No one's disputing that people aren't speeding and making it treacherous. I think that we've tried with a lot of enforcement and education. That doesn't mean they're on steps in between, which is really where I'm coming out on this. Just see, I have a couple more. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't see this as a choke down. I really see this as more of a situation where people are going to try and get in there first, and that's really, really bothering me. I know that there are a lot of speed bumps already there. I know they're from the Park District. We're only asking for one. And I really think that just that one would either help or a stop sign. But I really think that those two steps need to be considered before we move to spend $250,000 for something that I think a lot of residents, at least the 4 or 5 families I spoke today, have all asked for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bloomberg and then Councilmember Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have very brief remarks. I'm familiar with the manual for uniform traffic controls and devices as a personal injury attorney, having handled a lot of automobile accidents, automobile pedestrian accidents over the years. Mr. Gomez made a comment about how long this traffic manual has been in use and how well it is supported. I want to elaborate and say that it's not only been around for a long time, but it is the source of regular annual updating. It is not based on old information. Recommendations that are in the traffic manual are affected also by the National Traffic and Northwestern Traffic Institutes and other highly qualified organizations which base their findings and recommendations not on individual anecdotal guesses or conjectures or personal experiences of one person or another, but based on broad-based studies taking place over a long period of time in different circumstances and conditions that accumulate large amounts of statistics. It is my experience that both what Mr. Gomez and Chief Jogman have recommended, that stop signs don't act effectively as traffic calming measures and are not going to be effective in what I perceive to be an increasingly dangerous situation, and that the warning signal which has been proposed is the most likely to be successful based on the experiences and recommendations that are embodied in the current manual. And I want to emphasize that's a current ongoing manual. Those findings have been reinforced year after year. I realize that the proposal is expensive, but I think it's a significant issue. I think the residents in the neighborhood have made that very clear. And I think a stop sign would be ineffective. Granted, it would be less expensive, but it would be ineffective and very hard to enforce on a regular basis. The experience with traffic narrowing, interestingly, has been promoted at various times around the city in neighborhoods that have very wide streets and have urged the city to try to narrow the streets, and it's proven to be effective. So for me, while I understand the appeal of a stop sign, it's there. It has some sort of attraction as potentially effective. It isn't actually effective. So I feel very strongly that the recommendations of staff are well supported by evidence, despite the fact that we may have individual experiences from one day to another. Over time, those experiences are not borne out by what is truly effective. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Holloman.
Okay, 2 points. One, the speed bumps, humps, I think Gita makes a good point. We don't have them in the city. I don't think this is a reason to take that step and make that, set that, what's the word I'm looking for? I've lost my words, but set the precedent, right? Thank you. But in terms of the stop sign, we have numerous examples of where the stop sign wasn't warranted according to the manual and it didn't meet the test, for that. Park Avenue comes to mind, we have a stop sign there now. And this is one of those situations where I just kind of want to say, hey, before we spend, I'm all for spending the money if that is the best solution. But I kind of feel like in this situation, I don't see the harm in testing a sign for 6 months, seeing how it goes, put up the stop sign. That's a very low cost option, right? Do some additional data gathering, put somebody out on patrol to check out, see how things are going. If it's truly not working, if that stop sign is not helping, then go the next step and absolutely support staff's recommendations for narrowing the street and doing the other calming devices. But we have seen time and again that sometimes stop signs are not warranted, but they still do work. I think they're working on Park Avenue, just based on like the lack of complaints from neighbors. So I might take this one in 2 steps. Say, hey, let's give it a try. Put in the sign, not working. Then we go to the next step to invest the $250,000 in the process. So that was my thought.
Great point. And Oakwood is another one. Deer Park is another one, Linden is another one, and I'm sorry about the sound, I'm not quite sure what's happening here. But to that point, there have been several stop signs placed, and it's because of the intuition of the neighbors, the people who are actually walking and driving those streets. They recognize and understand. And I agree with you, Councilman Holloman. Thank you for that. Councilman Tapia and then Councilmember Stolberg and Councilmember Goldberg.
Yeah, I think that my feeling and our sentiment here is that safety of our children and our family members is of paramount importance. So there's no question about that. Trying to get to the best solution. I think there's support here for the best solution, even if it was a $250,000 solution eventually. But I'm also in the camp of, the stop sign idea that a lot of people have felt for a long period of time actually bears some testing. I know it's been tested statistically nationwide through all the standards, but I think the public and the residents who have been proposing this for quite a while, I think there's a sort of pent up need to say, well, that solved the problem. And if it's a short-term test, it gives us some time to address that. And secondly, and I'll speak for myself, and I wonder if this is other people feel it, the narrowing of the lane, I believe that it works because I believe the engineers and the law enforcement, chief of police who say it works and the statistics say, but I don't quite understand how it works. Like, I would like to see a demonstration of the mechanics or the aerodynamics or the movement of things where, yes, we can literally see how it will slow down cars enough to create the safety that we like. So I would like to see some sort of simulation or demonstration to understand that. And I think it would be good for our residents as we think about the potential $250,000 investment to have a confidence of a demonstration that then is proven and underlined by the statistics behind the study. So I would be in the favor of a very short-term pilot of the stop sign in a parallel demonstration of the alternative, more expensive solution that is being proposed.
Thank you. So in 2000, a mom with 4 kids marched on City Hall to get a stop sign that was 20 feet away from another stop sign at Lakeside Manor in North Deer Park. Sorry, Annette. It's now been there 21 years.
Who that mom was.
And survived and has stabilized that intersection. So with no disrespect, Chief and Manny, and to the staff that's done a significant study and all of this, I think we're getting a sense of where this council is headed. So Councilman Stolberg and then Councilman Bloomberg, and let's move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be real quick. As you guys know, part of my mission here on City Council is to opine on what I know and to listen to the experts on what I don't. And I certainly truly believe in Manny and the Chief's input. I don't, with all due respect to Councilmember Tapia, I don't need a demonstration. I think there's situations and case studies and other things that we could do. I'm not sure how we would formulate that demonstration and be safe. But in the interim, I do agree with the mayor. I think I was chairman of the Plan and Design or Plan Commission at the time when the stop sign at Oakwood you're referring to came up, and we looked at it, and it didn't. The counts didn't warrant a sign, and I think at that time we had some disgruntled neighbors. There was some development going into the area that would have added additional units to the neighborhood, and whether it met the letter of the law, so to speak, on the warrants, I think we had the same discussion that it was worth a try. It was for lack of a better word, a relatively no-cost solution. So I think I would be in favor of testing this as well. If it doesn't work, we can go to a more aggressive, certainly more expensive step. But if it does, the people sitting on this call are pretty big heroes for a long-standing problem for a very, very minimal expense. As far as speed bumps and other things, in my business, we've tried speed bumps, and the research on my end has shown, in addition to everything Gita said, what tends to happen is when people come to a speed bump, they slow down, and the chief can probably comment on this. As soon as they get past the speed bump, they floor it right out after it, and they actually go faster in between the bumps than they would if it was just a normal, whether it was a narrow road or a stop sign. So I appreciate all the work the staff has done. I agree with the potential solution. I just don't see the harm in a interim solution of inexpensive stop signs that may solve the problem before we spend $250,000.
Thank you. I know a member of the public, Ronit, has her hand up. Why don't we hear from her, and then Council Member Bloomberg, and then Manny Gomez. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Gita's nodding. I can see you. Thank you so much for taking the time and for so detailed and thoughtfully discussing the comments, seriously, for the safety of our children. We're really grateful, a lot of us in the neighborhood, that you're even giving this its due time. My son is in 5th grade. He bikes. He's a very proud, independent biker that takes the trail, the bridge, all the way to into school. He has proudly dubbed a bike brigade of neighbors that are being green and riding their bikes. My concern isn't so much going to school, but it's coming home. So driving north on Trailway, the visibility is really reduced, not just with the sign being blocked, but also that curve around. And so we were big bike educators, and we bike our childs to all obey like motorists, but many of his peers do not. And I know sometimes there's going to be times that he won't too. I'm concerned, and my question is the narrowing. How does that impact, particularly around that curve? Because how does seeing the narrow stop it any differently than say a stop sign? And I hope I make that point clear. The other point I wanted to bring up also is something one of the council people had just brought up about the stop sign will be difficult to enforce. I guess that worries me, because how would the light and stopping at the light for pedestrian traffic, and what if somebody doesn't press the button and want to cross? And how is that equally enforced? So those are my points. I know, I trust all of you. We've been here for so long, and you all make amazing work, make amazing decisions, and do wonderful work for our city. So we're very grateful, and we know you'll make the right choice. But those are my points, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Much appreciate your insights. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Bloomberg, and then Manny.
The last comment really was what I was about to address, which is that I think that if what we're looking for is safety, particularly in a heavily child traveled neighborhood, my preference is for the light, which is going to have a larger, more immediate impact on a driver than a stop sign. And I think there's a big difference between the two in efficacy. Nobody is questioning the placement of the stop signs that you discussed, Mayor, although I will tell you that the stop sign on Park Avenue, it effectively stops traffic, but to recognize what Councilman Stolberg noted with respect to speed bumps, as soon as cars get past that stop sign that are going east or west, they increase their speed to well past 30 and 35 miles an hour. So it is not effective in terms of regulating speed. To me, it seems that the particular problem that we're facing in the area we're talking about would be more it would be more effective to use the light one. But I understand where the council is going. I don't suggest that you're necessarily wrong, and I'm not disrespectful of that, but that's my perception.
Thank you. Manny?
Thank you, Mayor. One comment on the trial stop sign. If the city council elects to have a stop sign installed, I would strongly recommend and encourage you not to remove it at a later time. That is a bad practice to do. And it's a safety concern, because once a stop sign is in place and drivers get used to stopping, and people know that that's the setup, the control of the intersection, if you remove it later, you have the potential of somebody thinking, well, that guy on Trailway is going to stop. And then they pull out and the driver doesn't stop. Well, there used to be a stop sign there. Why didn't they stop? Well, it's gone now. And that can lead to accidents and other problems. And when we have many unwarranted stop signs in Highland Park, I understand that. And they go up for good reasons. But I don't know of any location in Highland Park where we have, like, let's try a traffic light or a stop sign, and then let's take it down later. If anybody knows of those locations in Highland Park, please let me know. But that is like, traffic engineering 101, don't do this. And the narrowing of the lanes in the Chicken, it's wide enough for 2 cars. We're not creating a central avenue where we have a 1-lane bridge and you have to wait. It's narrow, but it's wide enough to allow 2-way traffic. So I would encourage to talk to a traffic engineer. Architects are great, and maybe this architect has experience with roadway design, but it is wide enough for 2 cars. So you shouldn't have to stop and wait. So anyway, those are my biggest comment is please don't put up a stop sign and take it down later and have something bad happen there. Thank you.
Mayor, procedurally, if it sounds like the majority of the council is interested in a stop sign, so that's action that the council would not be able to take this evening, but if there is majority interest, we could put an ordinance establishing a stop sign on the next city council agenda, and then formal consideration could be done at that time for that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for reminding the council of that. We are basically asking the question about a contract and not discussing the installation of a stop sign this evening, but getting ourselves to that point for future meetings. Councilmember Littler, and then I am going to call the questions so we can continue on with tonight's meeting. Oh, Chief, if you want to say something, we always want to know. Okay.
Well, if there's someone from I saw a sign up from the public, and I don't want to deny anyone from the public.
She spoke already.
She already spoke.
Okay. All right. Well, then if that's the case, I just want to say I obviously will defer, and if Manny, if you feel that, you shouldn't take it down, whatever, that's wonderful. But again, to the mayor's point, that's not what we're discussing tonight. I know I said temporarily, but to me, this is just such a quantum leap step without a measure being taken that I think we have heard from the community really does want to at least try this initiative before we take that additional step. So that's all I was saying. And I again, no one here is not saying that this isn't a crucial and important safety measure that we want to do. We're just saying that perhaps there's a middle ground from which to start from before we, go all the way with it to the tune of $250,000.
Thank you. So Corporation Counsel, we tend to ask our questions in the affirmative. Do you want us to ask it in the denial, or do you want us to ask it in the affirmative and see if it fails for lack of?
Yeah, I would ask it the way that it's on the agenda.
Okie doke.
Which is in the affirmative.
So
Mayor, do we have to take a motion on this, or can we just let it sit and come back to it? That way we're not affirmatively denying anything. We can come back to it should we want to, because I think we all agree that if this is not a good solution, we may want to revisit this rather quickly. And I don't know that there's any advantage in us actually saying no to it.
Well, but isn't there at least then, so does that mean we're going to put a stop sign on for the next meeting agenda? At least if we vote this down.
Yes. No. That's what we're talking about. We're saying, let's put a stop sign on the meeting agenda for the next agenda, but there's no reason to necessarily vote this down and make anything definitive on it. Let's just let it sit aside if that's allowable.
So I'm going to presume that this is a proposal with a time limit on its approval or lack of approval with the city. That being said, we can certainly put it on the table. You don't need to take action. You can postpone taking action, and we can certainly, with the implication that we're planning to take action on a stop sign in 2 weeks, let it lie. So it's up to whoever wants to make a motion, go for it. Make your motion and we'll take action accordingly. Corporation Counsel, you look like there's something you want to say.
I was just going to assist if somebody, if I understand where the motion is going. One concept may be to continue the resolution on number 4 and to the next meeting and direct the staff to prepare an ordinance for the next agenda for a temporary stop sign.
Well, not a temporary. We don't want a
But
temporary.
we're not doing a temporary stop sign.
I'm sorry, for a stop sign.
We want to do a stop sign and look at it for 6 months. We have adequate data before we move on with something like this.
Okay,
And in 6 months, what's
Yes,
this work?
Wait,
for a stop sign.
Okay. Seeking that motion. Councilmember Tapia, was that you making the motion?
Yeah, but the wording would be what, to table this decision for today?
Continue.
Yeah, to continue, not table.
Continue the resolution to the next meeting and concurrently direct the staff to prepare an ordinance to allow for a stop sign at this intersection.
Good. So moved.
Second. Okay. I'm afraid to say, any further discussion?
Well, if I could just get confirmation, Mayor. So, Steve, I'm not going to put this action item on the next agenda, though. It's only going to be the ordinance for the stop sign. When you're saying continue this discussion is on pedestrian safety improvements in the form of an engineering solution.
Right.
Right.
So
So that could just be continued generally, and the
continue that generally. So
ordinance is the next agenda.
Perfect.
So the continuance would be without a date. It would be a non-specific, and then you would.
But they're not tied together, right?
Correct.
That's what I want to make sure.
No. We will be placing the stop sign question on the agenda in 2 weeks. This one will be continued to a date uncertain.
Perfect. Thank you.
So do we need to amend or do anything? Councilmember Tapia has said.
The motion maker and the seconder concur with that clarification, then you can proceed.
Yes, I concur.
Okay.
I think Councilman Holloman, or Councilmember Holloman was the seconder.
Yeah.
Sure, I concur.
Okay, thank you. All right, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer. Mayor Rotary.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. Great discussion. Thank you, neighbors, for your input. It was really appreciated this evening. And thank you, Manny. Thank you, Chief. Also appreciate all the work that's gone into this decision. Okay, we will continue on now to item 8. And I am making sure I'm calling the right item. So this is a public hearing for the proposed renewal of the City of Highland Park Special Service Area number 19 in accordance with the Illinois Special Service Area Tax Law 35 ILCS 200 Article 27. I hereby call to order the public hearing on the proposed renewal of the Central Business District Special Service Area 19. Pursuant to applicable law and requirements, notice of this public hearing was published on August 26, 2021 in the Daily Herald. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Here.
Councilmember Stone. Councilmember Bloomberg. Councilmember Holloman.
Here.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotary.
Here we have a quorum, and I declare the public hearing on the renewal of the Central Business District Special Service Area 19 open. I will now call on Business Development Manager Carolyn Hirsch to provide information regarding the proposed renewal of Special Service Area 19.
Mayor, City Council, just have to share my screen. Okay, can you see the presentation okay? Okay. Special Service Area is a unique economic development and financing tool that municipalities may use within a contiguous area to support and implement a wide array of services, physical improvements, and activities beyond those provided generally throughout the city. Since 1970, the city has established 19 SSAs. SSA 19's boundaries include all commercial properties in the B4 and B5 zoning districts, except for residential condominiums with separate real estate tax pins to the extent allowed by law. There are 149 parcels within the SSA. On August 2nd, property owner Alfred Claremont petitioned the city to consider the renewal of SSA 19 for a 3-year term. The funds would be used for marketing and events to enhance the economic vitality of downtown Highland Park. The annual budget is $110,000. The Alliance has sufficient funds to operate until June 2022. Therefore, the levy would be $25,000 in year 1 and $110,000 in years 2 and 3. If SSA 19 is approved, the Downtown Highland Park Alliance will direct the activities. The Downtown Highland Park Alliance is governed by a 5-member board of directors comprised of 4 commercial property owners and a city representative. Through collaboration with businesses, property owners, and city, the Alliance promotes the B4 and B5 zoning districts, and they support and participate in events to encourage local spending, tourism, and a sense of community. The proposed SSA renewal is subject to an objection petition that commercial property owners and electors of record within the SSA boundaries may file to prohibit its renewal within 60 days after tonight's public hearing. The city obtained a list of all registered voters within the SSA boundaries from the Lake County Clerk as of today to establish the 51%. After the 60-day objection period, the city will tally all of the written objections filed with the city clerk. If at least 51% of the registered voters and at least 51% of the commercial property owners of record within the SSA boundaries have filed petitions of objection to the renewal of the SSA, it cannot be renewed, and the city cannot consider a similar request for 2 years. Otherwise, the SSA will advance. The important dates to note moving forward are the 60-day objection period deadline, which is November 12th, as well as the renewal ordinance and levy ordinance, which are scheduled for consideration respectively at the November 22nd and December 13th City Council meetings. If the SSA is renewed, a special service area tax will be assessed proportionally on all commercial properties of record within the taxing district starting in 2022, based on equalized assessed value.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the City Council? Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Sounds like we have none. I will now entertain a motion to close the public hearing. We have a motion and
Second.
There we go. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Oh.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer. Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the public hearing is now closed. It's important for individuals to note they can submit written comments to the attention of the city manager following the statutorily required 60-day objection period, which ends on November 12th, 2021. The City Council is scheduled to consider the adoption of the renewal ordinance at the November 22nd, 2021 City Council meeting. Any questions related to the proposed renewal of Special Service Area 19 may be directed to the City Manager's office at 847-926-1000. Thank you. We will now continue on to item 9, which is an ordinance providing for the issuance of not to exceed 18,400,000 general obligation refunding bonds for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the city, providing for the levy and collection of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on the bonds, authorizing the execution of an escrow agreement in connection with the issue of the bonds, and authorizing the sale of the bonds to the winning bidder thereof. Is Julie Logan joining us this evening, Gita, to talk about?
Well, we're happy to provide a presentation, but there's a detailed staff report in the packet. And just to really emphasize that refunding of these bonds is anticipated to yield the city a net savings in excess of $1 million. So if you have specific questions, yes, Director Logan is here. This is recommended by staff as well as our financial advisor.
And I just want to congratulate her. That's really incredible to be able to work through this type of a process and net a savings of $1 million to our bottom line. Very, very important. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Director Logan? Otherwise, I'll be seeking a motion to approve item 9.
Move to approve.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman.
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer.
Enthusiastically aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. Item 9 is approved, and Thank you, Director Logan, and to her team as well. Thank you. Any business from the council? Okay, business from city staff. City manager has a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on behalf of our staff team, just want to share couple of reports with the City Council and the public. Just as a reminder to the public that on August 26th, the governor did sign an executive order which imposed a statewide indoor face covering mandate. This mask mandate applies to all public areas such as office buildings, commercial businesses. This also includes common areas of multifamily residential buildings. The executive order is available on the city's website, as is a comprehensive Q&A document that was established by the Illinois Department of Public Health. If individuals witness employees at a business not adhering to this mask mandate, they are encouraged to contact that business owner or business manager and bring that concern to their attention. If they continue to see violations, they're welcome to contact our office, and our business development team will follow up with that owner and manager. We've also created flyers for businesses and multifamily establishments to post on their front doors of the public areas, and those flyers and other information about this executive order, again, can be found on the city's website. And then just as a reminder to the public, we have transitioned all of our public meetings, so City Council, Committee of the Whole, and we've got a total of 18 commissions, committees, and boards. So we have transitioned to virtual meetings. So individuals can obtain the Zoom link, can obtain information of how to address the commission, advisory group, or city council. And then City Hall is always open pursuant to the Open Meetings Act for individuals who may not have access to a mobile phone or a computer to be able to watch that virtual meeting. So City Hall is open for these public meetings, and individuals can watch the virtual meeting with us. And then moving on to budget development. Our budget development process, as the council certainly well knows, we start this process in the spring with a special workshop with the city council. It's at that time we also start public outreach to residents and businesses to ask for their feedback, questions, as we put together this really principal policy document that is guiding city operations for the upcoming fiscal year. So we have been working diligently as a team since that time to put together the proposed list of projects for fiscal year 22. What are our major priorities? How are we going to fund them? What have we accomplished this past year, so we can reference that. Our budget includes our 10-year capital plan, our personnel summary, our financial policies, debt information, and so much more. So in total, it's 420 pages, but it is the best read that you will have. And if you're not interested in reading 420 pages, we do have, for public information, when we post it to our website, we do a budget in brief, we do executive summary, and we do a nice infographic. So there's really something for everyone. In terms of next steps, we are meeting one-on-one, Director Logan and I, with each of our elected officials, just to go through policy questions and make sure that we are reflecting the policy interests of the council and the proposed budget. So those meetings are going to take place in the next couple of weeks. And then we will have public workshops, so the public will be able to hear information that's included in the proposed budget from all of our departments at our 2 meetings in October. And then we will post the proposed budget on our website by November 1st. So that's a quick overview of our budget process and what's forthcoming. And then the third report is a reminder to the public about Smart 911. Over 80% of calls made to 911 are made from mobile phones. And so when an individual dials 911 from a mobile phone, dispatchers really have very little information. They have that phone number and they have a general idea of where the call is coming from. But the idea with Smart 911 is that individuals will be able to provide dispatchers with as much or as little information as they want. So our first responders are better equipped and better informed to respond to that emergency. So the safety profile in the Smart 911 safety profile includes the person. I'm going to take myself for an example. So it would have my contact information, who my employer is. It would have information on my husband, his contact information. I can include my blood type, I can include my kids. I can reference that my daughter has asthma. My son uses an EpiPen if he has an allergic reaction. I can identify the pets that I have in my house. And so if there is a fire at my house, then our firefighters will know that please save my cat Boots and our bearded dragon. And as much information is in there, the cars that we have. And so we do encourage the public to take a look at that Smart 911. And again, please update your information. It also allows us to be able to communicate with you if there is information such as a gas leak, or there's a missing child in the neighborhood. So that information is very worthwhile in terms of two-way communication with us as for emergency personnel purposes, and then to the public. So the app is free. So individuals wishing to upload the app can do so. Again, it's Smart 911. Or if you don't have access to a mobile phone, you could still enter information if you go to smart911.com. And another really nice feature about this is not just for Highland Park. So if I travel anywhere in the country, then other emergency dispatch centers, provided they're using Smart 911, and a vast majority are, they too will have that information, which is very worthwhile. And then individuals also have the opportunity under settings that they can get weather alerts if they want, or even traffic alerts. So we encourage people to take a look at that. If you have any questions or you need guidance on how to update your information, please contact us and we're happy to walk through that feature. And that concludes our report. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Gita? Nope. Okay. Sign up for Smart 911. Absolutely. All that information, thank you, Tony, is kept confidential, but it can make the difference if in an emergency. So thank you. All right. With that, I'm seeking a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapio? Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman?
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. Everybody have a great few weeks. We'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.